r/ask Reddit. What's the most are you really that stupid thing you've ever heard? Former co-worker of mine and I were walking through a department store during the holidays. There's an area dedicated to ugly sweaters and one had the Star of David all over it. My co-worker points to it and says, "Oh, isn't that sweater for that Jewish holiday? What's it called? Holocaust?" I wish her the best. I had a class in college focused on corporate social responsibility where we regularly discussed whether different companies met the appropriate standards. A girl proudly announced that she loved Pepsi and that they could commit genocide and she would still love them. We awkwardly moved past her statement, but the next class she came in and profusely apologized to everybody because she didn't know what genocide was when she said that. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. I mean, it's worse from an educational standpoint at first. Then I guess credit should be given for her educating herself and owning up next class. I had a customer yell at me that their donuts were supposed to be buy one get one free instead of half price. I had to explain how 1/2 plus 1/2 was 1. Never understood it and just sneered whatever at me and had me cancel their order. When I worked at a chemical facility, we had a genius production supervisor who figured out that you could increase the RPMs of the mixer without overheating the batch if you just remove the mixing blade. So it's just a shaft rotating inside a drum of viscous liquid. Then he blamed the guy running the QA testing, me, when the batch failed badly. Perfect example of somebody trying to improve something based on incomplete criteria. Well, if it runs at 10,000 revolutions per minute for 10 minutes, can't we just run it at 100,000 revolutions per minute for 1 minute? Well, if you take 9 pregnant women, you can get a baby in 1 month. I always use something similar when a client misses a deadline and they want us to throw people on it to fix their screw up when we have to do our part. I say it takes 4 hours to drive to Chicago from here. You're not going to get there in 1 hour by taking 4 cars. This middle-aged woman I work with at a fast food place was drinking a glass of super sweet tea when these words came out of her mouth. "My doctor said that I may have diabetes. I don't understand how. I never eat sugar." My diabetic former co-worker used to bring slushies to work for breakfast, but she let them melt a bit first so that they're watered down and therefore not as sugary. "Look at this tea. Do you see any sugar in it? I only put the sugar in. It disappears so I don't eat it." Meanwhile, watching a semi-friend do 10 separate ATM transactions. "Why are you taking out $200 from the ATM in $20 increments? You are just adding up the $2.50 fee." Semi-friend: "It all adds up in the long run." Me: "No shit. It adds up to you wasting money." Semi-friend: "No. Trust me, it adds up." Maybe they thought they were getting 2.50 instead of paying it. It was explained to him over and over for months. He still just argues that the money adds up in the end. Someone once asked me and my twin sister if we don't mistake ourselves for the other one. I like to think she was joking, but I don't think she was. I've posted this before, but my grandmother was an identical twin. Her sister passed away before I was born. She didn't like to tell stories from when she was little, but she did tell me one mistaken identity story. She was in their bedroom one night when they were really young and saw her sister through the window. She started talking to her sister to see why she was outside at night. Then she realized it was her reflection. My grandmother had mistaken herself for her twin. My best friend has actually accidentally called me by her own name, so I can at least see something like that happening. Girl at uni didn't know chips were made from potatoes. When asked if the huge potatoes on the bags didn't give it away, she said she thought it's only for design and she never reads the ingredients list. She doesn't have time for that. Reminds me of a co-worker who was vegetarian and said lettuce is a potato chip of the vegetarian world. We replied back with, "Potato chips are the potato chip of the vegetarian world." Explaining to co-worker that Africa is a huge continent with dozens of countries. And no, you can't drive there from America. Drive to Alaska, get a car ferry to Russia, drive down through Asia to the Middle East and get to Egypt. Max 4-5 hour drive. Small problem is there are no roads near the Rus border. For context, I live on the US East Coast, so my neighbor a few years ago, who was in 8th grade at the time, insisted that you could drive from where we were to England, when her younger sister and I tried to explain that there's an entire ocean between the two places. She said that you could take a ferry and sit in your car and pretend you're driving. My friend thought due to time zone differences between the US and the UK you could place a bet in the UK on an NFL game that had happened in the US and cheat the system because it hadn't happened yet in the UK. Someone in high school thought she couldn't get pregnant because she never did anal, only PIV sex. When questioned about it, it made perfect sense to her, because the vagina isn't where the babies come from. She thought women pooped out babies. While in high school sex ed, I heard a student ask the teacher if I pee inside her, she won't get pregnant because it'll kill the sperm. Teacher said something like, first of all, no, that doesn't work. Second, who would let you pee inside them? Biological mom of our former foster son, talking to his court-appointed lawyer guardian ad litem. He doesn't need to go to the doctor. All babies get ear infections. She had zero idea that he could suffer from hearing loss if she ignored them enough times. Not to mention how miserable he felt. It seems like a lot of people don't know this. When people learn I'm deaf in one ear from an ear infection that popped an eardrum when I was 3, I get a lot of weight. You can go deaf from that? Likewise, my stepson's mom got a lazy eye from untreated pink eye. Her mom is a nurse. What? While in a really long car trip with my parents, we were discussing countries we'd like to visit. My mother said she'd like to visit Japan to see the Great Wall of China. My dad and I don't let her forget. I work at an animal shelter and a woman asked me if we had any dogs that didn't poop. I told her no, all dogs poop. So she asked about cats. Yes, but we can only match them with the humans that don't poop either. Is this something you're in the habit of doing? In my communications class in high school, it came to my teacher's attention that a few people in the class, which had about 15 students, didn't have a basic grasp of world geography. So he pulled up an interactive world map on his computer and connected it to the projector. Okay, so this is where we are. This is, class responds with North America, okay. And down here, cursor is hovering over South America. Two girls expressed confusion over what it was. So he told them it was South America. Next, he moved the cursor over Africa and both of these girls, in unison, with full confidence blurted out East America. Later in the lesson one of the girls said that she thought North Korea was in the center of the US, and that's why we had so many problems with them. My main concern was that I was in the same school district as them for all 12 years, and I wondered how the same system that worked for me had completely failed to work for them. I mean, it's hard to get people to learn if they don't care, and then sometimes, once they do care, they're too embarrassed to admit they don't know, so they just kinda go along, assuming they aren't the ones that double down on stupidity. World history class in high school. This girl really asked how we won the American Revolution when the Germans had airplanes. I had to remember to breathe. I think she is the one who has to breathe voluntarily. Employee looking in box where we kept the name tags. Which one is my name tag? When I worked at Target we had a box of dozens of name tags with the same names on them. They were used for trainees, seasonal workers, and any employee who forgot their name tag that day. We had female name tags and male name tags, but I never understood the names they chose. For women, it was Ashley. Makes sense, right? My co-worker whose name was actually Ashley never brought her name tag. For men, it was Elwood. A dozen name tags that all said Elwood. WTF. Guy at my high school asked her biology teacher if humans photosynthesize. When told that we don't, he responded, but how come when I go in the sun my skin turns brown? He was 18. That's because he is transitioning to autumn season. Blowing balloons up with my own air, no gas etc. with my wife prior to her party. Wife, no. Don't blow the balloons that fall to the floor. Blow up the floating balloons. Me, look of disbelief. What? You need to use helium for that? Wife, no, you're just not bothering. That's what it is. Dude, stop being an a-hole. Just blow helium for her. Can your lungs not create that? All you have to do is go hee 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 when you do it. When I was in high school history class, this dumb as a brick girl asked our teacher, who was from the south, but we weren't even remotely close to the south. Still no excuse if she'd ever owned a slave. Related. In my high school history class, the dumb as a brick girl told our black teacher that if I had a slave, I wouldn't want him to be black because I wouldn't want people to think I was racist. That's like 11D chess thinking there. Too bad she's actually playing backgammon. A woman once asked me if Antarctica was really hot because Mexico is south of us and it's really hot, and other countries are south of us and they're really hot too. This woman was 40 years old. Well, it is a desert. There's always a 50% chance of rain. Think about it. It will either rain or it won't, so that's gotta always be 50%. This is why I always play the lottery. Either I win or I don't. That's 50%. I haven't won yet though, which is somewhat surprising given the odds. You're unlucky. Buy 2 tickets. 50% plus 50% is a 100% chance of winning. I remember sitting in a World Civ class in high school and a girl in my class asked how people outside of the US lived, since they were in a desert. The teacher tried to have her clarify which desert, to which the girl responded with, the one outside the US. She was convinced that every single nation outside of the US was comprised solely of deserts and that any major cities she had heard of, that is, London, Paris, etc., were actually US cities. Flesh it out and I'd probably buy that as a RPG. Freedom Land, cause everything else is hot sand. Teacher in middle school was playing a cassette tape for the class that was a bit distorted, so she attempted to improve the audio by adjusting the antenna. When I worked at a call center and someone said Q for cucumber to me. Cucumber. While discussing taking a girls trip and going on a cruise, my friend once said, I think it would be pretty easy. We could just get a cruise out of Dallas. Everyone paused. Her husband then broke the silence with, that is our marriage summed up into one sentence. A previous co-worker of mine thought that when looking at images of hurricanes, what she was seeing was the ocean swirling and not clouds. She had a bachelor's degree. Can you imagine how ducked we would be if she was right? I was driving with my mother on a pitch black night. My mother said the stars weren't out because there was no moon for them to reflect off of. Love you, mom. Girl I used to date was convinced that used cars came with insurance. We went out to look at cars for her one weekend, and on the way to the first lot, it came up in conversation. She absolutely did not believe me to the point that it was almost an argument. Salesman told her the same thing, so she demanded we go to another dealership. We visited 4 dealerships that day and all of them told her the same thing. Relationship didn't last much longer, but earlier this year she was pulled over and arrested for a litany of offenses including a DUI. But surprise, she had no auto insurance. I was explaining to my mother-in-law that the reason why my hubby and I were having fertility issues was that I don't ovulate properly, aka don't release an egg. She thought about it for a moment and asked with all seriousness why we couldn't just use one of my husband's eggs. I just looked at my husband trying not to laugh and stated that only women have eggs and men have sperm. That is pretty basic biology. Yep, just fertilize your husband's eggs with your sperm. What a progressive woman. Okay, so there was this mother that I once met. I'll call her Karen. So Karen is your typical MLM mom. She's in like 3 of them, including an essential oil one. One day, her son gets sick. Instead of getting cold medicine or whatever, she feeds him essential oils. Of course, he gets sicker, so the school he goes to treats him right. After hearing about this, his mom said, and I quote, "Don't give him that. The big pharma chemicals will make him immune to the essential oils." And they never think of the big essential oils company. One of the people high up in one of these companies nearly killed his kid with them. The kid got burned badly. His skin came off in sheets. So they stuck him in a tub, but figured since he wasn't in a whole lot of pain he'd be fine. Then they pulled him out, coated his burns in lavender oil and prayed over him. They posted this live on Facebook and people were saying you have to take him to the ER. The kid ended up in shock. That's when they finally put him in the car. Some people turned CPS on them. Thank goodness, because that was really ducked up. At 17 years old I assumed this girl couldn't be that dumb. But honestly the shit she said made me think she should be watered once a day. Some of the best included, Solar panels won't work in space cause there's no sunlight out there. Copper smells like a wet muffin. If you stood under a really strong waterfall, would you erode or would the water just move out of the way? Maybe she stood under a waterfall and her brain eroded away. From a customer, how do you type a capital 4? Alt plus F4. I play basketball and this one day we got talking about shooting percentages. So this one kid would try to convince us all that when you would shoot 0 shots and obviously make 0, you shot 100% because you didn't miss. He started this like 2 years ago and still when people bring it up he says he's right. He has murdered 0 out of 0 people. He has a 100% murder rate. I'd stay away from him. I once heard a girl say that she doesn't believe in miscarriages. Edit. Another good one is that if she asks is something's gluten free, she asks is that gluten, meaning the exact opposite. She also said she is going to become a Navy SEAL. She is not in the Navy. We were out of state and she said, oh wow, wild cows. They were not wild cows. During my senior seminar for an anthropology degree, a fellow student asked if married people started to look like each other as they grew old together because the genetic material they were exchanging during sex was becoming part of the other person's genome. Yes, that's a major reason why condoms were invented. Women go to great lengths and invest in cosmetics to ensure they keep looking young and beautiful. I, white guy, happened to be dating a Korean girl when I was about 25 years old back in 2002. Once, when she was out of the room, a friend of a friend pulled me aside and asked me if her vagina was really sideways. What? This 22-year-old dude, who had a day job and lived by himself, was attracted to Asian girls, but had been told their vaginas were slit sideways, like from thigh to thigh, instead of front to back. WTF. Watch a porno, you dumb mother ducker. Knew a girl who started becoming worried that her birds were gay, and eventually realized that they are. She said she was going to love them anyway and do her best to care for them despite their homosexuality. Happened just this last Sunday actually, as me and my wife were having Thanksgiving early with her family. My wife's cousin's husband said that vaccines were bad. Sandy Hook didn't really happen, and that we didn't really land on the moon. He said this all in the same conversation. I thought he was just joking, but he assured me he wasn't. I'm usually a pretty passive person, but I ducking lost it. The rest of the family had to separate us for a bit. The most aggravating thing was it didn't matter what I said, he was just like, you need to do more research. Like, Mr. Cooker, you just told me you learned this from watching a few YouTube videos. Oh my god, I need a drink just thinking about it again. In high school, when this girl found out prisoners used to be sent to Australia, she said that's stupid. They could just swim back to Europe. A coworker was trying to convince me that Nova Scotia was in Eastern Europe. I kindly pulled up a map on the internet. He quickly got embarrassed and confessed he isn't good with geology. My sister's friend, who is 22, believes that while you fly in an airplane, once you are in the air you just levitate there and the earth rotates under you. When the plane is over the destination, the plane lowers again and that's what happens. She wants to be a teacher. I'm late, but my mother once years ago said cats are cold-blooded because they like to lay in the sun. We immediately said, what? No, did you go to school? 4 or 5 months ago she doubled down on this, stating the exact thing for the exact reason. I told her, are you cold-blooded because you like to sunbathe? She still thinks cats are cold-blooded. My husband's friend watching the movie Moon and thinking it was a documentary. When we finished and explained it was in fact a fictional movie, he got so mad he pulled a gun at my husband. Needless to say, we are not friends anymore. Someone in my freshman year college class. Professor, do you think dinosaurs existed? Professor, there seems to be a lot of evidence in favor of that conclusion. What do you think? Someone, I don't think they did. I mean, how do we know they were called dinosaurs? They could have been called anything. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.